the Happy Meal. It was just another ordinary evening for Azekahh. He had spent most of his day shoveling frozen meats into a fryer at the local McDonald's that he got stuck working in. It wasn't a glamorous job, nor was it very exciting, but it paid the bills. The night was coming to a close and his shift was just about to end. Not a single customer in sight. After placing the last vat of nuggets into the bubbling oil, Azekahh began to make his way to the door. However, his journey was brought to a halt when one lone customer decided to make a stop for food. You know, this is McDonald's, and what other place is open at this time of night besides Taco Bell? Now, normally, Azekahh wouldn't think much of this, and let the rest of his crew handle this customer. Yet, there was something special about this customer that made Azekahh stay behind in his exit. This customer that was coming in was not only female, but also happened to be wearing a My Little Pony t-shirt. Azekahh was, of course, no longer associated with brony kind, but being a former mildly popular fanfiction reader who didn't finish the shit his fans actually wanted, he was always curious whether or not these bronies that he encountered actually knew who he was. Bronyism aside, though, Azekahh also couldn't help but be mesmerized by the unmatched size of her massive kahunas. Just the fact of her walking caused them to oscillate in a fashion that would bring ordinary men to tears. Luckily, Azekahh was no ordinary man. He was a sellout, no-name voice-acting queer. This day, the brunette bombshell would be his. Azekahh returned to the kitchen, looking at his crewmates, and stated, "I'll handle this one." He stared at the order monitor and awaited for her food of choice to appear. The seconds felt like minutes as the anticipation built up inside him in his trousers to see just what food he would be delivering to this woman. Then, there it was. The 20-piece McNugget meal. Of course, Azekahh thought. It must take loads of energy to haul those things around. It all makes sense. As if he were injected by a sudden boost of adrenaline, Azekahh knew what to do. The nuggets he left in the oil were all but ready to be taken out and packaged for delicious consumption. He worked hastily as the crispy, tender, 100% whole white meat nuggets collapsed from the basket into the serving tray. His brow trickled with sweat, the anxiousness building inside of him. Next, to place the nuggets in the box. Azekahh had done this countless times, but each nugget required special care in order to meet the standards he had set for this woman. No nugget would go unpresentable. The platter had to be laid out in such a way that when she laid her eyes on the beautiful display of processed meat, she would instantly recognize the handiwork of the forgotten fanfic reader. He began to count each nugget. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, until all 20 were arranged into a very spick-and-span manner. Then, there was the final step. The actual delivery of the goods. 20 nuggets in exchange for, well, nothing was guaranteed yet. But Azekahh couldn't help but get himself aroused on the journey across. Those colossal congas on the other side of the counter, just being able to get a closer look at them would be all the satisfaction that Azekahh needed. This was it. The moment of truth. Azekahh approached the counter, trying desperately not to make it obvious that his attention was clearly drawn to the customer's giant jugs. But it was futile. As Azekahh placed the nuggets on the counter, he heard the inevitable. Excuse me, my eyes are up here. It was all over now. The slim chances that Azekahh had at seducing this woman with his extensive range of pony voices were now shot. There wasn't anything he could possibly do now that would convince her to engage in coitus with him. He lifted his head in shame. But, as it turns out, in fact, this was the only thing that he could have done to convince her to engage in coitus with him. For the moment she saw his face, she instantly recognized the visage of a long-lost narrator, and the floor beneath her began pooling with vaginal fluids. The force of the liquid hitting the floor was so great that it bounced back upwards and propelled the customer into Azekahh, knocking them both through the air, past the kitchen, and into the floor of the storage closets behind them. What is this? Have I been eaten? Azekahh muttered aloud. His face was being suffocated, trapped between two gigantic mounds that could only be described as wet and soft. Darkness filled his vision. His first guess was that he was entrapped inside the stomach of a strange beast. He reached his arms into them, spreading them apart, to get a better idea as to what was going on. When he opened the crease between, surprise, shock, awe! There was light! And behind the light was that which we had been hoping to score this whole time. The face of the voluptuous vixen was behind those monstrous mangoes. Azekahh and his tallywhacker jolted upwards in shock. leaving the girl in front of him just as confused as he. Azekahh opened his mouth to speak, but before he was able to get any words out, his tongue was trapped by hers. And so their tongues danced as if they were listening to a freestyle. So they danced to the beat, and then when the lyrics came on, they immediately stopped. When she pulled back the kiss, Azekahh was too stunned to speak, so she did first. My name's Jessica, and, well, I'm a huge fan. Azekahh spoke. Yeah, huge. Jessica wasn't expecting to see Azekahh here of all places, working at McDonald's. Yes, he must be a true sellout now. Nonetheless, this was now the time to strike, the time to make all her desires come true, and although she did not know it, fulfill Azekah's as well. She had had enough of waiting. Azekahh clearly was too unstable to take any action of his own. She pounced, pinning Azekahh to the wall and crushing him beneath her titanic titties. Reaching down, she skillfully unwove Azekah's bottom zipper combo to reveal a pair of underpants that had been shattered by the sheer force of Azekah's meat missile. There it was, his bare penis, unsheathed, pulsing, ready for action. She grasped it in her hands, warm to the touch. She could feel the blood pumping through it as she rubbed against it. Suddenly, Azekahh snapped back to reality, realizing his situation. He stood upright and grabbed her, holding her against his body. The willpower to insert his yogurt slinger into this girl was so fierce that it fueled his body to lift both her and her mounds with ease. Shocked, she let out a small yelp, then placed her hands on Azekah's shoulders, ready for whatever his next move would be. Driven by an uncontrollable urge, he jumped at his opportunity and rocketed his solid sword into her, shoving his face into her breasts, savoring every moment. As Azekahh was driven by his will to copulate, so too was she. As soon as Azekah's beef whistle was inside, the embers of passion were ignited within her. She reached her neck in for another kiss, and as their mouths embraced, so did their genitals. The intense heat of the situation caused them both to sweat profusely, providing the perfect lubricant for the easy sliding of Azekah's Pied Piper into Jess's meat pocket. With her body slamming against his, and his against hers, it wouldn't be very long until Azekahh was at his breaking point, until Azekahh was ready to blow his load, until he was ready to finish Fallout Equestria. Well, that's not gonna happen. Anyways.
Ace, I don't know how much more I can take before I'm gonna... Ace!
This was it. The big shebang. The final moments of their encounter, all the accumulated tension and sexual energy built up between them would finally erupt in a final display of fireworks and Technicolor horses. Azekah's disco stick was going to explode. And then, there it was. He came. And you know, it was pretty neat. There was semen everywhere. Shit, man, it was intense. The end, I guess.